Hello and welcome back to another Raw Sport Quaran-Stream, the fifth one of this term so far, which is it's wild as we are at the halfway mark of the term one, which sounds very surreal to say. But I am your host, your Raw head of sport, Josh Sim. Thank you for watching along during this another weekend of international football. So there's not a whole lot going on anyway. So if you've chosen to watch this stream, thank you very much. And yeah, we are back. In a bit coming up, we're going to talk some early Premier League season awards so far because 8 games in, that's sort of a good time. We're nearly a third of the way through the season, or at least nearly a quarter of the way through, or just over a quarter of the way through. So there's plenty of stuff to talk about. We will be talking about a few of the international results, obviously, that have taken place. Obviously, there's games tonight and in the upcoming few days to talk about as well. And Euro 2020 or 2021, I should say, now has. We now have the groups for that, so we'll be reacting to those in their final form. We will start with talking about the news, including some really bad news for Liverpool fans, with Mo Salah and Joe Gomez both being absent for the next couple of weeks at least. Or with Salah, I don't know about Joe Gomez. I think it's a couple of months. It's a fair few number of months, so that's going to be worrying. But anyway, thank you, Enoch. I'm glad it's part of your Saturday routine. So with me today, we just have Ben Parkinson. But before I introduce him, because I've just remembered, all our socials obviously in the video description below. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel for more stuff. And we also recently did an interview with Warwick Wolves, which is now on the channel. It was myself talking to their communication secretary, Alex James, and their president, Reece DeGruchy. So that was a lot of fun getting to know a bit about them, getting their thoughts on the NFL season, getting to know a bit about the team, more about the team as well. So be sure to check that one out. It's also available to listen to on Spotify as a podcast as well. So give that a listen. And then I expect on Wednesday it'll be Raw Sport Weekly. I expect there'll be a lot of talk about the Turkish Grand Prix, which obviously happens tomorrow, and whatever sports results may follow. So with that, let's bring on Ben, who's joined us. There we go. Ben, how are you?
Afternoon, Josh. Yep, I'm very well, thank you. Been a slightly more quiet week of football, but still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely. I don't know. I mean, international football now. I mean, I do love it. It's just it does. I mean, it does feel like a bit of a break, a bit of respite after what's been a very chaotic season so far in terms of games played. But there's still plenty of news to talk about, and I feel like the first place we have to go to is Merseyside, because news broke, I think, earlier this week that Joe Gomez had picked up a very serious knee injury and he's out for what is thought to be the majority of the season. He may come back. There's conflicting reports on that. Then it came out that Mo Salah had tested positive for COVID-19. He will be sidelined for at least 2 weeks, you'd think, given the current guidance. There's even been some news sources saying that Andy Robertson has picked up a little knock in Scotland's win over this midweek. So that one hasn't been verified by the club yet, so take that with a pinch of salt. But Ben, going off the two that we definitely know about, this is really bad news for Liverpool.
Yeah, not a good week for Liverpool fans. At all. I think if you listen to Gareth Southgate talk about the Joe Gomez injury, it did not sound a particularly nice one. Him screaming, reports of him screaming. So yeah, I think it really just sums up the injury troubles of everyone at the moment, with the congested fixtures being absolutely ridiculous. Because, you know, although I love watching as much football as possible, it shouldn't come at a price of the players' physical and mental well-being. So they really do need to sort sort something about this, but it's been getting worse for years. The tensions between the international managers and club managers have been rising. This is not just now a thing. This has been going on for years, but I think the whole congested fixtures from COVID has really just elevated it and topped it off really, and that's where the tensions have risen. I think seeing these injuries happen, or even just positive tests, and the likes of Liverpool now being their squad really down to the thin bones, I think it really needs to evoke some sort of change. Someone needs to take some leadership, look at these fixtures, and really sort out what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gareth Southgate was the one who said there was a lack of coordination on the part of everyone involved, whether it's UEFA, the various football associations, clubs, and obviously the leagues as well. I mean, you touched on a few points. Let's talk about before we talk about, I guess, what it means for the Liverpool. You mentioned that it is a very strange time to have international football and all these kind of games in this sort of rushed, chaotic part of the season. Is it up to federations like UEFA to kind of when I say do more, I mean, I guess look after the players' welfare and recognize that this isn't a good time for fixtures like these and international fixtures. Maybe, and obviously it's not just UEFA, it's the South American version, it's CONMEBOL, it's CONCACAF, it's all the international football associations. Is it right that this is happening, that players are, having to play miles away from their country, traveling and obviously during a pandemic and play games for their country, and some of them are friendlies, some of them being meaningless games anyway?
I think the most baffling thing is that the players aren't asked. I think they're the ones who really need to say whether they think this is doable or not. And I think, for years there has been this debate, okay, is international football taking more of a backseat now, particularly in England, compared to the league? But I think I look at this situation, and obviously with COVID, and I think, this is different. This is where you actually want to prevent traveling from country to country. You actually want to prevent the spread. So if we are going to have football, to me, it only, without getting too political, it only makes sense to contain that football within the countries. If you look at a fan's perspective on the whole, I know some people do love international football, but throughout the international break, the vibe I get from most people is that they are missing the league football, whatever league that be. So I think it really needs to be, again, someone needs to take this leadership, ask the players, about their well-being, what they think they're capable of, and then, move from there over to what's acceptable. Because I think, there's friendlies going on that really don't need to be happening. They're not. Then, I've not really heard of a good friendly, to be honest. And I get that some of the qualifications need to happen. So if they do, prioritize them and keep the others at home, keep the others training, keep the others doing something else to prevent these injuries. Because the thing is, whilst we see a lot of games, we want to be seeing the best players play football. That's what we want to do. We want to see, and if I take my Man United hat off, I want to see Mo Salah play. I want to see Virgil van Dijk play. And, we're not getting to see them. We're not getting to see the best teams play to the best of their ability, because of this congested fixture list. And, it's like we said before, it just all comes down to this lack of leadership and player consultation.
How much of this would still be an issue if we had the 5 subs rule in England, do you think? Because it is just the Premier League. It is just England at the moment who are playing without. Obviously, in Germany, Spain, France, they are playing with 5 subs at the moment. How much of this debate kind of is magnified because there are just 5. It is 3 subs. It is not 5 subs as per every other major league in the world.
I think the 5 subs debate is very, very interesting, and I think I can see both sides to it. I can see how that would prevent injuries. Obviously, it would, and maybe there should be some statistical and data analysis between the countries that do have 5 subs and no longer have 5 subs. But then I also see the side of it. It does hugely benefit the big clubs, especially in England, when you have this massive elitist culture. I think you could then potentially see it benefit the big clubs, which would be a negative. But then again, I think you have to weigh up it. If there is going to be this lack of leadership and they're going to be stubborn and make sure these international fixtures happen and this I think if you're going to have a congested fixture list, you're going to have to make 5 subs. And I think you keep it at 3 subs and try and reduce the congestion. So I think it's got to go one of two ways. I think they're trying to do everything and do it the right way, but it's not going to work, and it's not fair on the players because they're not being consulted and they're not being able to share. So hopefully the only positive that will come from these Joe Gomez injuries and that are happening to all the clubs, in particular Liverpool, hopefully the only positive thing that will come from them is that people are going to sit down and think, okay, we need to do something about this because it is not fair on these players and it's not fair on these clubs and it's not fair on these fans.
Yeah, I feel like, and I think maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you don't. I think it's too late for English football, I think, to now switch course and add 5 subs in. I feel like because there'll be we're both football fans. We know how this works. Like as soon as that happens, then obviously fans will look back at these 8 games and go, well, Team X had an advantage over Team Y or whatever. Like there will be arguments like that. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's gonna maybe squad sizes need to be enlarged on a match day. Maybe more subs need to be available. Maybe if not more subs being made on the pitch. I guess having more players available to you, maybe will benefit young players. Getting more opportunities. We shall see. But yeah, it's an interesting time for this, and obviously it's because these. Well, if we're looking at Europe, for example, obviously UEFA had a major tournament in the summer that they needed to kind of get all their places kind of filled up. So that's obviously why they're sort of pushing for this. And obviously you've got the Nations League as well, which again, a UEFA tournament that they want going on as normal. So yeah, there's a lot of conflicting interests. And like you said, I think better coordination is needed across the board. But focusing now specifically on Liverpool and what that means, obviously, we also should mention Alexander-Arnold also picked an injury up against Man City on the Sunday, and that's ruled him out for 4 to 6 weeks as well. So what do Liverpool do with their back form, particularly with the centre-back spot? Because now, obviously, Van Dijk's out, Gomez is out. They sold Lovren in the summer. Joel Matip is there, but it's very hard to get him to play regular games because he picks up injuries. And Fabinho's also sidelined at the moment, although the one to most likely make the quickest recovery, but he is also sidelined at the moment. So what, in your opinion, what can Liverpool do? Do they convert a fullback into playing centre-back? Do they drop one of their midfielders into centre-back? What would you kind of be looking at?
I think it's a massive dilemma for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. I think they've been incredibly unlucky. I also think that I did always think they should have replaced Lovren, even with just a fairly competent natural centre back. But I think it's really about sticking it out until January and seeing what works. I think almost in this situation they have nothing to lose. I think give the youth guys a go, see how they do. But obviously that's a sensitive topic, as in you don't want to damage their confidence too much. And then I think, maybe dropping a leader back there like Jordan Henderson. I think that's something that will have to be looked at. Maybe to just have some command around the box. Moving the fullbacks in. I know Andy Robertson has played on the left side of a centre back before. Obviously not sure how different, because I think the especially in Liverpool's team, how they play with attacking fullbacks is probably very different to playing centre back. But again, I think that is a team that works in cognition. They work together. They're very much an engine, and I think that could benefit them in the sense that I think there's plenty of players there who will be happy to play. I think James Milner sums up that really. He can play anywhere across and he'll put a brilliant shift in. So I think, they've got options there. I don't think there's an outwardly strong option. I think they're definitely going to struggle. But that team's togetherness and that team's desire to work, I believe, should still carry them through till January, where I think they're going to have to dip into the market. They're going to be forced to dip in.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some possible centre-back targets, which I'm sure Man United will have a similar list in terms of their centre-back targets as well. But like you, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think Robertson as a centre back might work. Obviously, they signed Kostas Smikis in the summer as a sort of deputy for Robertson should he get injured or need a break. They may now need to play both of them. Robertson obviously on the left side centre back and Tsimikas as that left fullback, and that might plug a hole there. And as you said, maybe it is someone like Jordan Henderson dropping back or Milner dropping back. I think, yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of centre back pairings. Would you say the best centre back pairings tend to be one comprised of one that's built more on the power side, a bit more on the aerial side, and one a bit more on the quicker side? Would you agree with that? Because that would then make sense if you have, say, Nat Phillips or Reece Williams who are quite built for the aerial physical game, and then partner them up with a smaller but quicker midfielder or Robertson type as well.
Yeah, I think centre back it's the most important thing to have two centre backs that complement each other. I think you see down the years. So for example, Zuma and Christensen for Chelsea, I both think they're really good centre backs. I just think they really don't complement each other very well. Same with Maguire and Lindelof, and I think in Van Dijk you have someone who can do all of it, so he makes anyone next to him look good. But I think, I think definitely, I think when you've got this limited options of what Liverpool have, they're going to have to play around with it. I think it will be less about the individuals playing as centre back, more about the best combination that they can find. And I think definitely looking at bringing a youth player through who will probably have that athleticism or even maybe more of a natural feel for centre back, and then be partnered with someone who will be either physically fit or you can partner with a midfielder who can maybe dictate the play a bit more and be that leader. So yeah, I definitely think for Liverpool it's really important they look at the combinations rather than the individuals who play, because realistically they don't have an out and out star centre back to play there anymore. So I think yeah, it's all about trying things for them. But I think they're they've got a world-class coach. They do have a good squad. They all work together. There's a massive sense of togetherness at that club. I think they although this is horrible and really hard news to take for Liverpool fans, I wouldn't be surprised if some success comes out of this, and then finding fantastic youth performances and stuff, because that wouldn't surprise me at all, because I think out of all the clubs this could happen to, Liverpool are probably the best set up to combat it.
Yeah, exactly. And I just had a look at free agents available in the short term, and the names they don't quite fly off the wall. You're looking at an Ashley Williams. Could he be recruited by Jurgen Klopp to fill the void? You're looking at a Ezekiel Garay of Argentina. They're not quite the names at the moment. I know Liverpool fans got in touch with Stephen Corker via Twitter to say if he would be interested, and he said only if they played him up front, which would be quite something, given he's playing in Turkey at the moment. So for those who don't know where Stephen Corker is, he's now in Turkey. Yeah, this is when the Ragnar Klavan signing comes in handy, or all those those random signings. Krygiakos, I think we once had as well. Those veteran centre backs. That's when they come into play, which is really interesting. It's like, I mean, United have the sort of, I wouldn't say issue, but you have a lot of centre backs on your books at the moment that you're struggling to get rid of. So that's where that's sort of the opposite at the moment, isn't it? I mean, you guys got Smalling off your books, but you still have Rojo. You still have a fair number of players that I mean, you'd be very happy to see go, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that, like I've said multiple times on this show, it's poor recruitment and giving out contracts to players who don't deserve them. Because why would Rojo leave when he's on 80k a week? Why would he leave and take a massive wage cut? So he's happy to sit there and not play. So it's baffling, and it's kind of amusing now to think about that we still have players like Rojo there, but even players like Eric Bailly. I mean, I think when he plays, he's good, but it's just when he plays. So it's the opposite issue for Man United, but then kind of amusing in the sense that although we have all these centre backs, I still don't think there's a good enough combination there at all, and I don't think there has been a good enough combination since 2014. So an interesting one to see what happens there. But obviously in January, Liverpool will be looking at centre backs that potentially Man United are targeting, which would be very interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, who knew? Ed Woodward maybe is a secret genius who decides to stockpile players as opposed to getting rid of them, and has come across the right formula for this kind of season. But that's. I mean, we'll talk about centre back targets. Obviously, sort of the same names come to mind, I guess, from every big team. I mean, you look at Dayo Upamecano. Looking at, I know Liverpool have been linked a lot with Ozan Kabak from Schalke. There's a lot of, there's obviously a lot of names. Do you reckon it's the best strategy to go with someone proven, a veteran in the short term in January, who's more likely to be affordable, and obviously teams would be more likely to let go? Or should Liverpool look to get a young centre-back in who obviously costs a bit more and will require a bit more development time, but will be a great astute signing for the long term? What would you prefer?
I think whoever comes in is going to have an immense amount of pressure on their shoulders. They're going to be expected to come in and sort those defensive issues out straight away. So I think it really does depend on the personality of the individual you get. However, obviously, I heard Connor Cody as a name mentioned. I don't think he would leave Wolves. But for example, I think that would be probably the best possible player you could get. There's a natural leader on the pitch. He's got no fear. He's just going to go in there straight away and lift the team. He's very experienced. Because my only issue would be with getting a younger centre back. You pay all that money, they come in, and it's not really making a big difference. You have a couple of bad games, confidence drops. They're not a leader. They can't pick it back up. So I think the scouting team at Liverpool are really going to have to work hard to properly analyse who the best fit is and what road they want to go down. Because it is Liverpool's defence with Van Dijk, Gomez, the possibility of Firmino, Matip, any of that's one of the best defences in the world. So do you want to add to that with a younger signing, or do you want to just get a short-term fix that may help? I think it will probably also depend on the league position, to be honest. If these young boys that they've got end up doing really well, then I'd suggest you just go and get a veteran to partner one of them with. However, then if they're not doing so well, do you want to risk getting another young one in and ruining someone else's confidence? Like it's a really, really tough, tight line to walk. So I think it's very difficult for Liverpool's recruitment team. But they've been fantastic over the past few years. So I'm almost expecting them to know exactly what they're going to do in January.
Yeah, I've just had a quick scour, and obviously Ben White from Brighton's also been mooted as a potential target. So there's a few I'm sure they've got their eyes on in terms of youngsters, and yeah, we'll see what happens with senior veterans. Maybe an unlikely loan for one of United's scrap heap of centre backs. Who knows? But yeah, we should mention obviously Mo Salah, obviously on the other end of the pitch. He will be out for, we assume, about 2 weeks. So looking ahead, that would mean games against Leicester at home, who are the table leading team at the moment. Possibly missing the home game against Atalanta, and maybe an away game at Brighton. So, but given, Diogo Jota's obviously been in very good form, you still got Roberto Firmino, you obviously got Sadio Mane. Does the Mo Salah blow, will it really affect them as much, or have they got the depth for it?
I think it will affect them just slightly. I think you've probably got the most ruthless winger in the world, in my opinion, in terms of clinically finishing and taking teams down single-handedly. So I think that naturally will affect you. But like you said, the form of Diogo Jota has been absolutely ridiculous, and you've still got Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino. Even Divock Origi and Shaqiri would easily probably can play those games against Atlanta. So I wouldn't be too worried if I was a Liverpool fan. I also think the way bringing up the way they play again, Klopp and the system is very much just all fluid and all together. And I feel like there's definitely enough left there in that attacking trio to cause Leicester or any team in the league problems. I think the main problem is just keeping them out at the back. So I wouldn't be too worried if I was Liverpool fans. And yes, it's 2 weeks, but one of those weeks is almost in the international break. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Of course, disappointing. You probably don't see one of your best players play, but maybe that's more game time for Diogo Jota, which I'm sure Liverpool fans will welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows what as you said, Liverpool have enough attacking depth. Obviously, it'd have been interesting if. Obviously, Rhian Brewster has already gone to Sheffield United. It'd be very interesting if he was to get an opportunity in a situation like this. Obviously, we won't know now. I agree with you. I think Liverpool have enough depth to cover there, and it will feel like the Liverpool of, I guess, the time before they signed Virgil van Dijk, when they were the game plan was to outscore the opposition and not worry about the defense, which Joe Spanioli will be very infuriated by. It's been a very quiet week for news. Obviously, the other big thing, I guess, was the Premier League have scrapped pay-per-view games. I don't think we need to spend too much time on it, because I'm guessing we're of the same opinion. It didn't work. They tried something, to be fair. It didn't work. And this is just a really sensible move.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it was stupid, to be honest. No one was ever going to pay it. It was never going to help anyone. And I think it just summed up, to be honest, the materialistic and brand view of football now. But it's the same with it. I think it sums up almost the football. The cost for football kits now is absolutely ridiculous. For football boots, if you want your child to go and play football, it costs a hell of a lot of money. And it's just upsetting, really, that it's football becoming inaccessible. I mean, the money you have to pay for Sky and BT to watch these games anyway is a lot of money. So, £15 on top of that, it was absolutely ridiculous. And it's not really the foundations on what football was built on. So, I think it sums up the way football's heading. But finally, they've scrapped it, which is great news for football. Not even from just a financial point of view, just from a integrity point of view.
Yeah. I don't really have much more to add. I give them credit for trying something, because obviously it's a difficult time at the moment financially, and so this is, people learn to innovate in this time and try something, but it clearly didn't work, and so it is what it is. And so games will now just be on TV as per normal. I think this was a failed experiment. That's just how I sort of see it, and it just didn't work. So with that, I don't think there's too much. I'm literally scouring news sites at the moment. Tony Pulis got appointed by Sheffield Wednesday, which is obviously very amusing to know that he is the savior. Would he be your go-to managerial target for a struggling team at the moment? Is he sort of your number one reliable option?
I think he's one of the best out there, probably on the way now. I think whatever your opinion of him, he does get a job done. So for Sheffield Wednesday, I think a club that's obviously been in a lot of trouble starting the league on minus points. I think it will be an encouraging appointment for them, and whatever he does, he seems to get results. So, but that's a very, very good few appointments that have come through in the Championship now, with the likes of Chris Hughton as well. So I think that will be really interesting this season to keep an eye on the Championship.
Yeah, he took Middlesbrough, I believe, in his last job to a playoff spot or so. It's certainly a reliable one. I'm sure their baseball cap sales are going to go up. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot of... I would be, Sheffield Wednesday, I don't know if they've been... they're not going to get a very attractive style of football, I'm sure, but it'll be an effective style of football. So we'll wait and see and how that goes on. yeah, I don't think there's too much else to go on. So I guess we will move on to quickly touching on international football. And again, it's just looking for the banner. There it is. It's, as we've said, it's obviously it's come at a very inconvenient time, but it is what it is. It is happening. Obviously, looking at some of the fixtures that have been played so far on Thursday night, England were meant to host New Zealand, but obviously New Zealand, it's a risky time to travel from New Zealand to England, obviously. So they chose not to do that, and they played Ireland instead. And that ended up being very much of a bit of a ceremonial 3-0 win, a very obligatory one. Obviously, we analysed the squad. We'll get onto Jude Bellingham in a sec, because that was an addition that I guess surprised quite a fair few people. But in terms of England beating Ireland 3-0, what was the big take? Was there a big takeaway for you in that game? Because I know you watched it. I didn't, to be honest. And to me, it seemed like a pretty routine result and performance.
Yeah, no, exactly. What I was going to say is that England were more convincing, but as they should be. So, there wasn't much that came from that. I've previously criticised Mason Mount a lot, but, credit where it's due. I think he had a very good game. And Jack Grealish, again, I think proving why he needs to play. Obviously, a bit bittersweet for Man United fans seeing the Sancho and Grealish link up, knowing that they were two of our targets. But, I think Grealish is someone who just has that ability to get 5 yards on the opposition. I mean, he does the same move every couple of times. We shifts it from one foot to the other, but it works every single time. And I think he's different from any of the other English players. He has that ability to create space, make chances. I think when we do have a lot of those traditional pivot type midfielders like Declan Rice, like Calvin Phillips, like Jordan Henderson. We need someone else who can really, pass between the lines, break those lines down and feed the ball into the strikers. And I think that's exactly what Grealish does. I think I sum him up as basically being a bit more just adding glue to that England lineup, which is very good. But yeah, nothing much else really to add. I think it was just a convincing performance but that's required of England.
Would we say Jack Grealish is now a lock in England's best team at the moment? Obviously, it seems like Southgate wants to play him as one of the front three, and we know, as we talked about last week, that is a very crowded position given the kind of just the insane amount of riches England have at the moment, with the likes of Raheem Sterling, who didn't play, who wasn't in the squad for this. There was obviously you've got Jadon Sancho, who scored. Harry Kane was left on the bench. So there's obviously Marcus Rashford wasn't. He's at Man United, recovering from his injury. So there's obviously an insane amount of talent. But is Jack Grealish now a must pick for England?
I think, if you ask the fans, I think they'd say yeah. But I think Southgate, he thinks very differently. I think his thoughts on Grealish, he says he's not a midfielder. He says he's a wide player, and he was waiting for him to get these same stats that the others were getting and things like that. So I think, I can't make my mind up whether Southgate's just not that keen and maybe felt forced because of the lack of other people available to put him in, or whether it's this time, this like plan of giving him time and kind of bleeding him into the team slowly. I think because we are so competitive in those areas, I don't think anyone's probably a lock apart from Harry Kane when it comes down to the Euros. I think we'll probably rotate, but I think that's something we should take advantage of. I think sometimes we can sit here and worry about who's not going to play, who should play, who shouldn't be playing. But really, the fact that we've got this attacking talent in our country is a phenomenal thing. If only we had this at left back and centre back, it would be amazing. So I think he's definitely. I think he's got to book a place in that squad. I think it would be uproar if he didn't get in that squad, just because of how different he is from every other single player in the country right now. So I think he should definitely be in the squad. But unfortunately, when you're competing for those front three positions, unless you're Harry Kane, you're not guaranteed a starting spot. So you're going to have to prove yourself.
Yeah, it is, as you said, it's a very difficult debate to go on at the moment. But I I like you. I think he adds a little bit of that X factor, that kind of pop and spark that a lot of English midfielders don't tend to have. And his current form merits it as well. It's not like we're picking him. Like he is playing as well as any other midfielder at the moment in the Premier League. So he definitely deserves it. And I would have him in England's best team at the moment, just because he does add that something different. And obviously, to go a bit defensive, I think he offers a bit more than, say, Marcus Rashford or any of those other options. So yeah, for me, he gets into their best team. Obviously, the other notable player that made an appearance, Jude Bellingham, 17 years old, the third youngest English player now, behind I think Theo Walcott and Wayne Rooney, the only players who made their debut at a younger age. Were you surprised that he got the pick into the senior squad? Because you look at the players who are not involved. You've got James Maddison, you got Ross Barkley, Harvey Barnes, to name three. Was it, first of all, his selection, was it a surprise to see him in the senior squad?
Yeah, I think it was a surprise. I think, I mentioned last week about how much of a fan I am for Harvey Barnes. And I know it's a slightly different position, but, you could easily pull Jack Grealish back into midfield and things like that. And then I think Ross Barkley as well. I think he definitely deserves another England call-up, whether it be this time or next time. I think his move to Villa has been great for him on loan for the season. So, yeah, I was really surprised to see Jude Bellingham in there. I think he's someone with immense ability. He wouldn't have been, wanted by Borussia Dortmund and wanted by Manchester United, and sort of had this like rapid incline in his career over the past year. So yeah, I think I was surprised. When he came on, he didn't really, he had an okay, he did a couple of good passes. Very, very standard stuff. But I think, just looking at him at 17 years of age, he does not look 17. The stature and physical presence of him in midfield was greater than any of our other players. So I think he's someone who I'm really excited to see. Although I feel like maybe Ross Barkley should have been in there personally ahead of him. I take it, and I think, let's see what this guy can do. So maybe he gets a little bit more game time. Maybe not. Maybe it's just giving him a feel of what it's like, because I think for definite he is going to be a star of the future. So I think, yeah, very surprising, but hopefully you can see more of him.
Do you think his selection was more because Southgate just wanted to have a look at him in training and all that stuff and in games? Do you think it was more a selection just to get to know him and see him more in action? Because he's obviously had Maddison in the squad before. He's obviously had Barkley and Barnes in the squad before, so he knows what it's like. Do you think it was a selection for that, or do you think it was a selection for Bellingham can add something to the team right now?
I think probably he's just in the squad for practical reasons. I think, maybe Southgate's realised, okay, I'm not going to start whoever I choose, who's going to come in out of Barkley, Maddison or Bellingham. I'm not going to start them. So who would actually benefit over having that 5 or 10 minutes on the field? And I think potentially Jude Bellingham, being someone who hasn't been in the first team England squad before, yeah, maybe it would benefit him more. I think as well, he's someone who, playing in the German league, and with Jadon Sancho, maybe it was an easy call up considering he was in the under-21. So he was benefiting the Premier League clubs more by keeping their other players. I don't know, but I think it was, it was definitely not. I don't think he was called up for his impact. I think he was called up to bleed him into this team, to integrate that mentality, and maybe even from a PR perspective, just show that this is an England team of youth. We're still building, and we've still got great players to come.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that last bit, because I do think it does send out a message, I guess, to young English players to say, if you go overseas, we will still monitor and pick you, I guess. And it takes away that fear of not being picked for England if you go overseas. So I feel like it does do that as well, I guess, in the psyche of young players, to know that, hey, we can go to Germany, we can go to Spain or, for example, whatever, and still be like on the radar of the England team. So I think it's an interesting one. I think it sends that message out, and as someone who watches German football a lot, I can say on current form, Bellingham is in Dortmund's best team at the moment. He is in that centre midfield pairing. He's done very, very well, and I was a little surprised that he was picked. I mean, I acknowledge that his form has been really good. I was a little surprised. That was it. But he's a great talent, as you said, and it'll be interesting to see how many opportunities he gets this week. As we look at tomorrow, England play Belgium, and last time we predicted this game, I remember we assumed Belgium would walk it, but England somehow came out with a win, albeit I think there was a fortuitous kind of deflected goal from Mason Mount that won the game. But how do we rate England's chances against Belgium?
I think it's just impossible to call. I think I'm too scared to make a prediction, just of absolutely no idea how it's going to go. I think maybe the one advantage that Belgium could have is in maybe a few of their players are in the leagues where they have 5 subs, so potentially maybe there's a little bit more selection for Belgium. I'm not too sure. I haven't looked into it. So we'll wait and see. But then again, I even think I think Belgium could field a really strong team, and we could put a B team out and come away with the win somehow. I think they do it time and time again. So I think it will be interesting to see. I think the fact that this game has obviously did happen a couple of weeks ago, it's not quite maybe as exciting as that like international football fans feel. But we'll see how it goes, because there's a little bit of a rivalry coming here with being in the World Cup group the last time. So I think they're common opponents, and it'll be interesting to see maybe if some previously regular starters for England, how they show up to the game.
This is the ultimate test for England's backline, right? We talked about last week about how England's backline looks sort of their concerns about the backline and how well they'll stand up against the best of the best. Well, this will be their test, wouldn't it? For the likes of Michael Keane, for the likes of Eric Dyer, this will be sort of the litmus test to see how well they'll do going forward against stronger opposition.
Yeah, 100%. I think that would be probably the main talking point and the main source of fear for England, because I think when you look at the centre back options of Eric Dyer, Michael Keane, and Harry Maguire, none of them blessed with pace at all. And then you look up against Romelu Lukaku, I think that there's definitely room for exploitation there. So I think it will be really interesting to see how they cope. Because obviously, Michael Keane and Harry Maguire playing centre back against Ireland, that's very different. So it'll be interesting to see if that pair's maintained. Because I think Joe Gomez as well, losing Joe Gomez for England, I actually think is massive. I think he's one of the few fast centre backs we have. You even bring Connor Cody into the lineup, he's still not another fast centre back. I think our only one really is Joe Gomez. So. And we talked earlier about the how important it is to have centre backs that complement each other. Even that's more important than the actual individuals themselves. It'll be interesting to see who plays for England and if they do complement each other in a game where they're going to be tested a lot more. Yeah,
absolutely. And I saw a bit of Belgium because they played Switzerland in a friendly the day before the England ones, a Wednesday night, and they fielded a pretty much an understrength team, but Michy Batshuayi got 2 goals and won the game, and they obviously have a lot of depth, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm going to go out on a limb and predict a scoreline, so those next week on the show can kind of hold my receipts if I get it right, and if I get it wrong, then feel free to slate me. But I'm going to say 2-1 Belgium. Do you still want to not venture out and go for it, or do you want to?
I'll give in and I'll go for one. I'm gonna go positive, and I'm gonna go 2-0 England.
Okay, there we go. So there we go. That's what we think. Obviously, then England play, because this is a very rushed international break. They play Iceland on Wednesday, so 3 days afterwards. So I don't know if there's too much preview for this one. Obviously, this is a game we expect England to win, but obviously Iceland just brings bad memories for all English fans, I feel. So there is a little bit of that stigma around that game, but. Yeah, I think this is a game England should win, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 2-0 win for England. So I'm gonna combine my prediction and sort of analysis for that. So, yeah, any thoughts about the England-Iceland game, and any prediction you want to make for that?
I reckon I think a 2-0 win would probably be my prediction as well. I think yeah, exactly like you said, a game we really should win. I feel sorry for the players though and their fitness. So that if it wasn't a big scoreline and there's a couple of people who've played again, I'm not bothered this time because I think this isn't their fault. However, no matter how unfit or fit and congested the fixture, we should always be beating Iceland from now on after the scare of what happened. So yeah, I think there'll be an interesting game. Maybe Jude Bellingham gets a start. They rotate some of the younger guys in, which will be exciting to see. But yeah, it definitely should be a win for England.
Yeah, and we will come back, I guess, with reaction to how England go on this week, next week on the next Quaran-Stream. So I think it's an interesting week for them. Before we look at Scotland, I'll just quickly go through the kind of eye-catching friendly results we've seen so far, and that was Finland beating France in France 2-0, which was quite a result and a surprise for a team. I mean, in my view, I rate France as the best international team going at the moment. So that's, and you're not. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So Finland beating them was. We had the Spanish and the Dutch drawing 1-1. Good news for United fans. Donny van de Beek scored for the Dutch, rather, not United. So that's obviously a good, hopefully good sign going forward. I think the Portuguese won 7-0, which is quite a result against, I can't remember who. I'm having a look now. And the Germans beat the Czech Republic 1-0. Again, I sort of had an eye on that game. It was a very interesting team that came out and some debuts. So an interesting time for Germany at the moment. And then obviously, as I said, Belgium beat Switzerland 2-1. So those were the kind of eye-catching friendlies. It was Andorra who Portugal beat 7-0. So commiserations to them. Just another friendly arranged for Cristiano Ronaldo to get more goals for the international record, I guess. That's the only reason I can really think of why they would choose to play Andorra. And then obviously going forward, there's obviously Nations League games. Tonight, I believe, Switzerland take on Spain. You're looking at Germany versus Ukraine, Portugal versus France is quite a big one. We talk about, I mean, you and I just said France are the best international team going around. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo being one of the best players going around. So it's going to be an interesting game. Yeah, Italy, Poland. There's a lot of interesting games going around. Spain, Germany on Tuesday should be a very exciting one as well. And obviously, also the Welsh, they drew 0-0 with the US on Thursday night as well. And that was the game that I thought would be more exciting than England-Ireland, and turns out it was goalless. But the US have a very exciting team at the moment. For those who are not watching them, keep an eye on them. They've got a lot of exciting youngsters going forward. So yeah, let's move on to Scotland because that's the fun one, and that's the game. I guess that was the game that reaffirmed what international football is all about. At least to me, it did. If those who didn't see Ryan Christie's kind of emotional interview on Sky Sports, but you watched the penalty shootout. For someone who's not, I'm guessing, and I've never asked you, I'm guessing you don't have any relation to the Scottish ancestry or descent or anything, but you must still have been invested as a neutral anyway in this sort of high stakes drama between them and a very good Serbian team as well.
Yeah, I think for a long time, you haven't got that almost penalty shootout feeling, and like a lot on the stakes, and almost this little fairy tale kind of story of Scotland coming through, and I think it was brilliant to see. I think David Marshall's reaction at the end was as he was checking whether his foot was still on the line, and it was an illegible save. I think it was amazing to see. I looked at the Man United player Scott McTominay, and I think that it's fantastic news for Scotland. I think it brought a smile to everyone's face seeing their reaction. What a penalty shootout as well. I think you're saying a lot more saved right now, but I think Scotland scored all of theirs, and I think Serbia just missed the last one. So I think it was a great penalty shootout, real quality there for both teams. So I think it was lovely, and I think it was warming for football fans to see, because at a time when there's a lot going on, I think that was a real aesthetic kind of feeling towards football.
Yeah, I love the reaction of some people who said, Mitrovic saying he was the next, Fulham's penalty taker, and then he goes on to miss one in his country, and that would be disastrous for Fulham. But yeah, I think it's a big result. It's again, as I said, very talented Serbian team with Milinkovic, Savic, with Mitrovic. There's some very good players playing for them. So big result from Scotland. Big result for Andy Robertson, who's off to drink some Vimto in his nan's car, as he wrote in his book. So a huge result, and it means we will see Scotland in the Euros. And it's very early to preview the Euros, but we can sort of look at the groups now that they've come together. So if I'm just going to share my screen, there we go. Should be able to see it. Yes. So Group A: Italy, Switzerland, Turkey, Wales. You and I can just kind of react in real time, really. That looks like a very tough group for Wales against Italy and Switzerland, obviously being proven teams, and Turkey always a bit of a wild card as well.
That looks a very tough group. So it'd be interesting to see how Italy do there as well, because I don't even think that's necessarily straightforward for them getting out the group. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, B looks a lot more straightforward. I think you and I can agree. We assume Belgium would finish top. I guess it'd be a race for second between Denmark and Russia, although Finland, as they showed, they beat France. So definitely a team that could pull off a surprise or two. Obviously, Russia had a very good World Cup in 2018. So yeah, that should be an interesting one. Going down, Group C: Austria, Netherlands, North Macedonia, who have been booked their place this week, I think, with 37-year-old Goran Pandev scoring, which is remarkable. A remarkable story. And Ukraine, again, I think you'd expect the Dutch to come out on top, and possibly Austria to come second. Although Ukraine, obviously managed by Andrei Shevchenko, who's done a pretty good job with Ukraine. So that should be another battle for second. And then we get to Group D, Ben, which is the one all England fans will be kind of obsessing over next summer. I showed this to my flatmate, and his reaction was quite interesting. It was obviously Croatia brings up bad memories for England fans, especially going back to Euro 2008. And then, the Czech Republic beat England recently in a friendly or some sort of competitive game in Prague. So it's not a straightforward group for England.
No, not at all. I think it's actually a difficult group. However, I was discussing with some people, and we were saying that could benefit England. Normally, when we've had an easy group in the past, we've really struggled to beat those teams. So maybe this will mean that from the start, we have to kick off from the start, be ready from the start, and we can build that momentum and be more ready for those knockout rounds. But I think Croatia's always going to be a tough game. Czech Republic, obviously we lost to them, and I think Scotland, really we do have to beat them. I think that would be the one that would probably be deemed as a bit embarrassing, and we'd probably get mocked by the Scottish if we lost that. So I think it is a really tough group, but hopefully that will bring out the best in this squad rather than disastrous not getting out the groups.
Especially when England, I think the England-Scotland game's at Wembley, or scheduled to be at Wembley, so that would be quite a shock. you'd hope England get top of the group. How realistic is that? How realistic is it? Yeah.
I think, on paper, but we should definitely be getting top. I think, and I really want to. I think there's been a massive change over the past couple of years. Mainly down to Gareth Southgate in the positivity surrounding this England team. So I think we can sit here and comfortably say, yeah, we should be getting top, and I really hope that we do get top. However, I think years and years of disappointment. I'm very wary of Croatia, and I feel like they definitely could top the group, and we and then we'd obviously get second. But yeah, I don't even want to think about anything less than that because of how far this England team has come over the past couple of years. Because anything less than that would be a massive, huge step backwards. So. Yeah, very, very much needed a 1-2 spot for England.
Yeah, I would agree. As a uninvested neutral, I guess, because I don't have too many ties to England. I would expect you to come out top, but obviously this season injuries are coming thick and fast. A lot of changes throughout this chaotic season, so who knows? But yeah, I would install England as a favourite to top that group, just because I also think Croatia's sort of in a bit of. I mean, they're a bit more of a veteran team, starting to consider maybe going into transition or not. And obviously England, sort of Gareth Southgate taking the approach of blooding youngsters in and trying to foster this young, exciting team. So. Yeah, it's an interesting contrast for sure. And how do we think Scotland get a second or third place here just before we move off this group, or do we worry for them in terms of the caliber or opposition they're up against?
Yeah, I think they've been a bit unlucky with the group, but I cannot really see them getting a second or third position on paper. Their confidence will be high and flying though after they've got into the World Cup. But you just hope at the Euro. Sorry, you just hope it's like it'll be enough by the time the tournament comes around for them to stay motivated. So I mean, realistically, I can't see it happening. But there's always surprises. I think Wales shocked us a couple of years ago. So why can't Scotland do it? So we'll see.
Yeah, I think it'll be that game between Czech Republic and Scotland that will decide third place for me. I think that's the one to focus on. Going down to E and F, the final groups. I'm looking at that. I think you and I would both think Spain have a straightforward path, although Poland with Lewandowski is, when you have someone like him, that they're instantly a threat. So I feel like Spain and Poland would be the favourites there. And then F is an extraordinary hard group to call. Obviously Hungary, who, by the way, shout out to them for making it on a last-minute Dominic Szoboszlai goal, making the Euros. He is an exciting player, as has been discussed on this show before. But who would you pick as the two to go through in this group? Because this is a really hard one to call, F.
Yeah, I mean, what a group. I think it's almost impossible to call, because I think on paper France's team is so strong. Same with Germany's team. I think they obviously have gone through a bit of a transition stage, but I think recently they've they're starting to figure out their best team. I think the likes of Sane and Gnabry on the wing, obviously playing together now at Bayern Munich. I think that's a formidable force with Timo Werner up front. So it'll be interesting. I'd say Portugal aren't as strong on paper as France and Germany. However, France and Germany don't have Cristiano Ronaldo, which in the Euros and in pretty much any competition is a massive deal. So I actually feel really sorry for Hungary. I think it's probably, like, in my opinion, the worst group you could actually get. So I think it's just impossible to call. I'd like to say on paper France and Germany, but I can see either one of them dropping out. I think that group will be a fantastic watch for football fans.
Here's my thing, and this is, I mean, I am a very keen observer of German football, so this pains me to say it, but I do think right now, if someone asks, and I am asking myself, I guess, I would have France and Portugal going through, and it's because as you said, Germany is sort of in transition at the moment. Defensively, they're still working out their sort of shape. And I think Portugal have. I think the coach of Portugal, Fernando Santos, I think he is coaching Portugal much better than Jogi Löw is coaching Germany. And so I look at, Portugal, obviously they won the last Euros. They're very good. They're very good in tournaments like these. And I think, France obviously have an embarrassment of riches. So that, for me, they're penciled in. But I would have France and Germany France and Portugal going through. And Germany missing out at the moment. But that might be me being slightly pessimistic about Germany's chances. But it's like you said, it's a really difficult one to call. And who knows? I mean, I think it goes without saying, since you and I have already spoken about this, we both have, if someone said who would win the Euros now, we would both have France winning. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I think it's not just strength with them. I think it's strength and depth. Their squad list is endless, and I think I think the amount of young players they've got coming through, and then mixed with the leadership they've got as well is insane. So I think they're definitely the strongest. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether they live up to expectations.
Yeah, nothing enrages Arsenal fans more than to learn that Jose Mourinho made the under-21 squad, but didn't make the senior squad. But that's just how France are at the moment. They've got such a huge squad at the moment. And yeah, I would also have them as favourites. So leaving international football talk aside, obviously we'll come back to it next week when we have a lot more results to cover and a lot more performances to talk about. We'll talk about the Premier League, and just briefly we'll touch upon the last weekend's results, because obviously we talked about United Everton, but we couldn't really go further than Crystal Palace Leeds. So just quickly, I think the game Man City Liverpool, we talked about that being a very high intensity game, a big game in the context of the season. It feels like a draw that will benefit Liverpool more than Man City. Am I right in thinking that? Does that benefit Liverpool more than City, that draw?
Yeah, 100%. I think we were talking about it before and saying how, I think if City lost, you can write them off as title contenders. It was that big of a game. Seeing that lineup an hour before of Liverpool playing a front four, and I was so excited, and I think that the first half was amazing. The second half, very anticlimactical. I think it was a lot more disappointing as both teams were more cautious. But yeah. I still think it was a good game, a great result for Liverpool. I don't know. It's still, I think, still that unconvincing feeling with City. It's just not quite working, and it's actually, I think, shocked most of us. It's taken this long.
Yeah, it does feel like they're lacking that. And, Gabriel Jesus scored a fantastic striker goal, but it does feel like they're lacking a bit of that killer instinct. And obviously De Bruyne missing that penalty doesn't help either. So that's sort of the feeling from it. And I guess from a Liverpool standpoint, they were very relieved to get away with the one goal, conceding just the one and coming away with a point and we'll look at the table in a bit, but they've had I guess they've not performed to the standards we thought they would, but they're still in a very decent position in the table.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it will. This season you can't really call which way it's going to go. But I think we've got to celebrate the fact that it's like that, because for so long we've known the champions, before January, and that's not so. I was listening to a podcast the other day and them quoting that potentially you could be an 80-point champion. I was very much like, that really brings back the old memories of about 10 years ago when first place would lose more games than second place. It's more of a vintage feeling, and I think it's something that, although it's an incredible weird season, we should embrace it and enjoy the fact that we don't know who's going to win. Yeah,
absolutely. The other obviously Leicester being Wolves was a pretty significant, a pretty big result for them. They did well, but obviously the second big story on Sunday was Villa going to the Emirates and coming away with a 3-0 win. Are we guilty of underrating this Villa team even after that 7-2 win against Liverpool? Are we guilty of dismissing that result as a one-off, and then obviously this result against Arsenal? Does that then show that Villa are a legitimate, maybe not a top half contender? I guess I won't put them in the European contender bracket just yet, but certainly pushing for a top half finish.
Yeah, I definitely think they should push for that top half finish, and I definitely think they can. I think they had really, really smart recruitment in the summer. I think Ollie Watkins looks to be a great signing. Ross Barkley again being at the heart of a lot of that. So I think it's, and obviously they have Jack Grealish, one of the league's best players, arguably. So I think, there's definitely, even after the 7-2, a lot of those goals were deflections and it was a very odd game. So I think, people didn't want to get carried away. But I think now after these results, I think that, we can't get carried away. We just have to praise them for the work they're doing and the work Dean Smith's doing, because, I didn't see them being this good. I saw them improving, but I didn't see them being this good. So I think it's, it's a massive result for them, 3-0 Arsenal away, and not good for Arsenal, because I think that's a few times now Arsenal have been beaten by Villa. So, it would be, credit where credit's due. I think Villa look a very good side, and they're no longer maybe that team you could walk over last year. They just seem a lot more solid, a lot more compact, and there seems to be a lot of positive feelings at that club at the moment, which is good to see. Yeah,
and you could argue that I suppose they're not your orthodox front three, but Grealish, Barkley, Watkins is sort of slowly but easily becoming now one of the most dangerous front threes out there in the league at the moment. And defensively, another clean sheet, and a very solid defensive performance. Very impressive. And then on the other hand, I mean, rival fans love to watch AFTV when Arsenal are losing, and I'm sure that weekend was no different. But it's a bit like United, I suppose. They had a really good result. Obviously, they beat you last week, and a big result away at Old Trafford, and then come down to earth with this result. So, where do we think Arsenal lie at the moment? Are they closer to that team that beat United 1-0 away, or are they closer to that team that fell apart against Villa at home?
I think it's a difficult one. I've always felt since the start of the season, I have heard Arsenal fans potentially getting a bit too carried away. I know they've made defensive improvements. I'm still not convinced. I'm not convinced by Arsenal's defence, and I haven't been for the best part of 15 years. So I think, it's a really difficult one. I think the thing is they're still building, so they're allowed, and they're going to be inconsistent in some areas. And I think Mikel Arteta's reaction to that defeat, it actually seemed, like it almost really kind of upset him. And he was just gutted at the prospect that they've taken a step backward from how well they have been doing. But, I think they'll get back up again, and I think they'll get some great results. I think what's interesting is what's happening with Aubameyang. I think it's being played out wide. It's not quite working out at the moment ever since he signed that contract. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there, because personally, I appreciate and respect what Lacazette does, but for me, I think you've got to move Aubameyang back up top, because I think he's that much of an influential player for them. From a PR perspective, they've given him that contract, they've given him that wage rise, they've given him what he wants. He's going to captain them. So, in my opinion, they need to try and fit the team around what's him. They made sure that this building process was centered around Aubameyang. Then you've got to make sure that the team plays well with Aubameyang in it. So I think that'll be interesting to see how Mikel Arteta does as a relatively young manager, how he handles this situation coming up. So and how Arsenal bounce back as well. So I think it'll be a little bit of a nice test maybe to measure, see how far Arsenal have come, not just as a team but as a club, in terms of the leadership there. So that'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, not to harp on how over-enthusiastic Arsenal fans were at the start of the season, but obviously Willian put in that really good display in that first game against Fulham, and then a lot of Arsenal fans were hailing his impact, and then ever since he's not quite hit those standards, and suddenly people starting to look at him, and obviously because you've got Nicolas Pepe on the bench, you have a £72 million signing on the record signing on the bench just there. It does feel like, and maybe, and I feel like maybe you'll agree with me on this, they are reliant on that front three and sort of whoever plays winger as well, because the centre midfield pairing are not creative types. We wouldn't classify Granit Xhaka or Thomas Partey as creative types, certainly. So, I mean, that's why they chased Hosam Aouar for so long, and they weren't able to get that deal done. And yeah, this is sort of what comes with it. So yeah, do you have? I mean, is your main? I mean, what would worry you more if you were an Arsenal fan? Would it be the defensive stuff or the failure to create going forward?
I think the failure to create. I think when you've got a player like Aubameyang who's so experienced, it becomes less of a confidence and form issue and more of a systematic issue. So clearly there's something not quite working there, whether it's him who just can't get the best out of him out wide, needing a position change, or maybe there's just a lack of fluidity and a lack of creativity, like you said, within that front three. Who knows? But these are experienced players who play in that front three. So I don't think it's a confidence issue. I don't think it's a mental issue. I think there's a systematic issue there. So I think it's just probably a little tweak. Maybe try a back four. Maybe put Saka on a wing. I don't know, mix it up a little bit. Because I know Nicolas Pepe expressed the other day that he's not happy with really with his playing time. So hopefully he can get a bit more. Maybe it's time to try and bleed him back in a little bit. But then, obviously then there's the PR point of view of, although you're playing your £72 million player, there's a player there who's on 220k a week who you signed, and now he's on the bench. So, it's a very interesting from a club point of view what they're going to do in terms of how it looks. So, but I think one thing to remember is if you get results, none of that matters. So, we'll see how Mikel Arteta handles it. But I think it's going to be a little test and a little bump for him in his Arsenal career.
You sort of see that parallel at United, don't you, as a United fan, with the debate about Paul Pogba and should he be in the team or not. And obviously he came with a very price tag as well. And obviously you've seen the whole. I mean, you've got rid of him now, but Alexis Sanchez was in a similar boat as someone on very high wages that wasn't really contributing and wasn't playing and ended up costing you a lot to sit on the bench. So you can see, I mean, there are parallels certainly with United at the moment as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it always just comes down to that, how the club's being run, really, because, you look at Liverpool, there's no one on really, poor wages there. There's no, they all seem to have a wage structure, a transfer strategy, all of these things. And I think that although Arsenal will benefit of Mikel Arteta changing from head coach to manager and having more control, I still think there's a lack of leadership at that club, as reflected at Manchester United. So, I think they are very similar clubs. Very similar in the sense of owner investment as well, being next to nothing. So, I think it's very similar to measure, but it's really hard for clubs to balance it these days because you can't just go out and buy. There's so much more to the on the pitch stuff now. I think you lose face value. You can be taken advantage of by players if you put some players on high wages who end up performing poorly. So, I think it's definitely complicated, but I think, like I said before, the one thing that makes that all go away is results on the pitch and winning trophies. If you win trophies, who can question your method? So, it'll be interesting to see how they go. But one thing, and maybe credit to give Mikel Arteta, he didn't choose to bring Nicolas Pepe in. So, as far as I'm concerned, him being on the bench, maybe that's why Willian plays, because he brought Willian in. But Nicolas Pepe, he didn't. So there's more respect to that, leaving Nicolas Pepe out potentially on face value. So, a lot of complications, a lot of little nitty gritty details in there. But yeah, it's interesting to see how he handles it.
Yeah, he will. And Twitter's football social media, as you know, is very reactionary. And I've already seen Arsenal fans calling for managerial change. It feels very premature to kind of make those calls. Yeah, it'll be a test for him. It's going to be very interesting. So I think with that, we're going to do what I want to call the way too early Premier League season awards. We're just going to give out on an 8-game sample, 7 games for United and City and a couple of other teams, Villa and Burnley. So not a lot of sample size and very much still a lot of game season to go, but it feels like a pretty good time to do this. We'll probably do this again on our last Quaran-Stream of the term as well. We're sort of close to the halfway mark, just and whatever international break comes in 2021, just because it's a fun thing to do. But we'll start with the individual player awards. So the obvious one to start with is player of the season so far. For me, it's if I'm thinking of players that have kind of elevated their team highly, I want to give it to one of Heung-min Son or Harry Kane. I'm probably going to give it. It's tough because I think it's tough for me to split one or the other because I feel like both had such an impact. I feel like Kane has certainly taken to this role of playing a little bit deeper and creating more chances as well as scoring them. But obviously he's created a whole lot more chances than he's ever had. And Heung-min Son for me has been dynamic going forward. So those are my picks. I can't really split them, to be honest. But they've certainly lifted Tottenham into a really good spot so far at the moment. A lot of these picks come with so far / at the moment. But Ben, is there a player of the season so far for you? Player, if you had to call it now.
I think when I think about it and I go through the clubs and think about it, there's just one name that constantly sticks, and James Rodriguez. I think from a personal perspective, as well as I completely wrote him off at the start of the season. I did not think that signing was going to work. So if you look at from that point of view, I think he's been terrific, terrific for Everton. So I think he's the one who sticks in my head the most. But then I completely agree with what you say about Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. I think so influential and by far the best duo in the Premier League right now, and probably one of the best duos in the world. So yeah, I think they're probably the three that would stand out for me as well.
Sorry, I forget. It's Son Heung-min. I think that's how you pronounce it. Although I've heard both pronounced it, so I don't know. Looking at signing of the best signing so far, going off that, I'm guessing James Rodriguez is your signing of the season so far.
Yeah, James Rodriguez, and I think closely followed by Diogo Jota. A big fan of him. I think I spoke about him a lot last week, so I won't go into immense detail. But I think fantastic recruitment. And if you look at it from a point of view of what club has made the best signing so far, I think Liverpool have got to be there with Diogo Jota. But a lot of notable mentions: Callum Wilson, Højbjerg, Partey. I think they're all excellent additions. So, but yeah, I think for me it would probably be James Rodriguez again, to be a little bit boring. But I think credit where credit's due.
It's all good. I and Joe Spagnoli picked up on this very early on, but I would say Højbjerg has been a revelation in that centre midfield and has given Tottenham a lot of solidity. My pre-season pick of Robin Koch at Leeds has not worked out so far. Here's hoping, fingers crossed, that he comes back and rectifies that for Leeds. But obviously, defensively, Leeds have been fun to watch, shall we say. They've let in 4 goals at Palace, 4 goals, and 3 goals at Liverpool. They've been conceding all over the place, but I'm hoping Robin Koch turns it around for Leeds at the back. Højbjerg, as you said, Callum Wilson's been really good. Obviously, you've made a strong case for James, Diogo Jota. Certainly at Chelsea, it's very early on, but Ben Chilwell's looked very good for Chelsea as well. Obviously, he came with a much higher price tag. So those are sort of the names, and who knows? I mean, it's very early to call Ruben Dias worth the 60, 70 million pounds he was worth, but he's also had a very astute kind of start as well for them. So yeah, a lot of potential names and we'll see how I think things shake out going forward. But let's talk about when I say young player of the season so far, I guess someone who's made sort of an impact. You can lump it together with the other one I had was most improved player of the season so far, as in someone who's kind of made that leap from last year into this year. So we'll go with young player first. Is there a youngster that's stood out to you so far for their play? I will venture. I mean, there's obviously a fair few names that come off the top. Max Kilman's made a really good start as part of that Wolves back three. He's played very well. Obviously, Phil Foden has done well in trying to solidify his first team place for Man City. Who else am I thinking of? Yeah, I mean, those two, I think, for me, have stood out in terms of that young player category. Does there any that stand out for you?
Yeah, I think I agree with Kilman. I'm really impressed by him, and then I think if you can class Dominic Calvert-Lewin as a young player still, I'd put him forward. But I'd say that probably would come in hand with most improved. Yes. But yeah, been very impressed by all of them. And you know, the thing is with young player, who knows who's going to burst onto the scene with this year's fixture congestions. You know, I think youth is going to be forced to play at some point, so there could be someone who we've not even heard about who's going to snap that one up at the end of the season. So yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, actually, and I mean, I've just remembered for signing of the season, I want to give a shout out to Timothy Castagna. I think he's had a very good start in that fullback spot for Leicester as well. But you mentioned most improved, and I think this one you and I could probably agree. For me, it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin from where he was at the start of the season to where he is now as one of the top strikers in England. Obviously, he's worked on a lot of his finishing with Duncan Ferguson and Carlo Ancelotti, and has become one of those strikers that seems to be able to score during every game and against every top opponent. So yeah, I would say Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I'm guessing you'd say the same.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you know, I'll admit I was guilty as well of previously not being a massive fan of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I'll admit I was wrong, and I've changed. You know, he's clearly worked very hard in his game. He's not only maintained, you know, what he's good at, he's added so many different dimensions in terms of, like you said, finishing and movement. So you know, definitely, I think so far the most improved. So yeah, see how he goes for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, his goals will be key to see how far Everton go up the table, I guess. So we'll see what happens there. Not to put one of your players under the bus, but we do have the Jesse Lingard Award for player that's not quite hit the standards, hit the high marks at the moment. I mean, disappointing player of the season, I guess we can call it that. Jesse Lingard Award for disappointing player of the season. The player that comes to mind has not quite hit the mark for you so far. That probably needs sort of to rebound in the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, I think I found it hard to select this one because there's three names that I think were prominent. I think Eze, I was quite disappointed with, but I think that's a reflection of his game time, and obviously I think he scored a fantastic free kick at the weekend, so I didn't want to put him necessarily in there. Donny van de Beek, from a Manchester United point of view, been very angry and frustrated at his game time, so therefore I think he's been disappointing in that sense. But the one who I was so excited to see, and then who has not quite clicked as well as I thought, especially with signing Timo Werner as well, is Kai Havertz. Has not quite come off yet. I still am confident he will, but if we're measuring disappointment, I am a bit disappointed as of yet. But again, I feel like the disappointing award is not necessarily a reflection of the player. It can also be a reflection of the club and different scenarios going on. So, but Kai Havertz would be the one I have been a little bit disappointed with.
Yeah, I feel like I feel bad for him because I feel like he's been shoehorned into a lot of positions that are clearly not tailored to his strengths, and I feel like he's been played all over the place. So, but if we're going off expectations, I guess yes, a lot of. I wouldn't. You're not alone in thinking he would kind of have a lofty impact on Chelsea, and that's not really come to fruition at the moment. For me, I'm just trying to think of any big name signings that have so far not quite hit the mark. I mean, it's a tough. I mean, yeah, it is sort of tough. I mean, again, these are way too early Premier League award season, so this is way too early to call. But I I am actually struggling here. There have been signs that have not hit the mark. I mean, obviously Wolves paid a lot for Fabio Silva, and he's not had the game time, but that's just because he's not had the game time. But he obviously came at a very high price. I was hoping to see a fair bit from Southampton signed a centre back called Mo Salisu, and he came with a very good reputation from Valladolid in Spain, and he's not had game time, so I can't say he's not had game time, so it's not worked out for him so far. But yeah, that does seem to be the trend with a lot of these players that we're picking. I mean, maybe Willian, because that's I guess the most experienced one that we thought could do a fair bit for Arsenal and hasn't quite clicked as well. So yeah, that's. I mean, again, it's very easy. It's a very much an easy call, like hard to make because we're making these calls so early. So
yeah, I think I've just remembered. Sorry to interrupt. I've just remembered William Saliba actually is quite disappointing in the sense that he's not been included in our squad. But then again, it's the same thing of it's not his fault. It's just we're not seeing him. But I thought he was. I knew. Speaking to Arsenal fans, they were very excited to see him. So I'd imagine they're a bit disappointed they haven't seen him as much.
Especially given another player who we forgot to put for signing of the summer. And actually, I put in Young Player of the Award so far, Wesley Fofana at Leicester. That young centre back has done extremely well, and in both categories, the signing and young player, he definitely fits the bill, and he's been exceptional. And obviously, he was Saliba's teammate. And yeah, as an Arsenal fan, you kind of watch that and go, well, hopefully Saliba becomes just as good or even better than him, because otherwise we picked the wrong guy. But there was a name I just had for a sort of disappointing-ish player, Rodrigo from Leeds. I think he's not quite hit the ground. Obviously, Patrick Bamford has taken a lot of the attention for his goals and whatever, but Rodrigo's not quite hit the mark yet. I'm sure he will. He's a clever, intelligent player, and sort of reminds me of a bit of a Firmino, and who also needed a bit of time to develop when he first came to Liverpool. So I'm sure that'll come, but he hasn't quite been the player that a lot of us thought he would be. Let's look at, goal of the season. I guess we were talking beforehand, goal of the season for years. There's a clear standout for this one.
Yeah, Manuel Lanzini against Tottenham. I think that goal has everything in terms of the distance, the sublime quality, even just what that point actually meant for West Ham, and what that goal actually meant. It wasn't just they were losing 3-0 and then it was 3-1 and it was just a good goal. The magnitude of that goal in terms of context was also an amazing goal. So I think for me, I think that one, I personally, I just cannot see what can top that between now and the end of the season, which I know is a massive call to make, but I appreciated and I'm in awe of that goal so much that I'm willing to say that is my prediction for goal of the season, having not witnessed most of the season. So I'll go out there with that, but I think that was an incredible moment for them and him.
It's difficult to think of one, and I think it's the moment itself that makes it as well, that kind of carries it. It's very difficult for me to argue against that one. Going a little off topic, obviously the Bundesliga, we saw a crazy scorpion kick goal from Lazaro on the weekend, which I guess in terms of if we're talking about season as in the whole season across all the leagues, I guess for me that would be up there. But yeah, in the Premier League, Lanzini, his goal was an exceptional one, and for me, it's a nice link into sort of meme of the season. And for me, it's I have two, and the first one being I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but a couple of Tottenham fans reacted to the West Ham Tottenham game, and when Lanzini scores, you can sort of see their face drop. And similar to, I guess, it's funny because went at 3-0 up, and I don't know, the original video, I think they talk about Tottenham being a contender and the rest of the Premier League should watch out, and then Lanzini scores and their face kind of drops. So for me, they're up there with meme of the season, along with Jose Mourinho's Instagram account, because whoever's running it has really, it's taken a life of its own, and it's been a very fascinating watch. It's probably one of my favorite Instagram accounts to follow at the moment. So that's my meme of the season so far. Have you got any?
I think I'd have to agree with you on the Jose Mourinho Instagram account. I think thoroughly entertaining what he posts, and I think it's a lovely different side to his character that we're seeing since that documentary. I think I obviously saw about how all of Leeds' squad seemed to have the same barber. I thought that was a good meme of the season. But apart from that, I think Jose Mourinho definitely stands out for me so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at, we'll just turn attention to managers and sort of going to manager of the season so far. It's an interesting one for me. I give it to Dean Smith because of how he's elevated Villa from a team that was, they nearly were relegated on the final day of the season, and he's now made them into a very exciting team to watch, quite frankly. A lot more exciting than they were last season. So for me, it's Dean Smith. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti's done an excellent job as well. I give a shout out to him. Brendan Rodgers has continued his kind of excellent coaching at Leicester and kind of expert guidance. So those are the three I have in that category. Who would you put as your manager of the season so far?
I think I agree on Dean Smith 100%. He was always going to be my one. I think, he's been amazing. It's the turnaround, and it's the, people were questioning, okay, does he have the, defensive coaching ability to shore them up at the back? And so far, yes, he does. I think as well, it'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks about Liverpool, because I think this is even for Jurgen Klopp, probably the best manager or one of the best managers in the world. It's a really tough ask with this defense, what he's going to do. So I think it'll be interesting to see how he copes with that. And obviously he's always going to have a case for manager of the season. So that'll be an interesting watch, but he's always going to be up there. So I think, I'll go for Dean Smith as of now.
Yeah, I also forgot to mention Ralph Hasenhuttl was done an excellent job at Southampton as well. So those are the four I have at the moment, just with the resources they have and with where their teams were supposed to was sort of expected to finish. They've obviously exceeded them so far. On the other side, we have the manager most likely to be replaced by Harry Redknapp award. Obviously, we couldn't use Tony Pulis in that one because he's now been appointed. So Harry Redknapp's our go-to. Here's the thing. West Brom's for me is the obvious candidate because obviously Slaven Bilic doesn't seem very happy at West Brom at the moment. There seems to be some problems under the surface. And then I guess this is a bit of a sentimental kind of feeling with Chris Wilder and Sean Dyche, but they are under the hot seat at the moment, it's fair to say. And then obviously, I hate to do this because I know you're here, but Ole Solskjaer is sort of in that category as well, although he fluctuates. So it's very hard to say at the moment, but I look at, just looking at the league table and where teams are in relative, he's sort of in that category for me as well. So who would you put in the manager most likely to be replaced by Harry Redknapp? Oh, that's a mouthful. Award.
Yeah, I think I agree with you with those three. I think 100%. Like Slaven Bilic, it's quite sad to see maybe what's going on there. He does not look to have the best relationship with the club at the minute. So that's obviously that's going on. I'd say is most likely. Interesting mention Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because I think 100% if you just look at the league table, it looks really unacceptable, to be honest. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on a 10-game winning streak as he normally does, and then we've flown up into the top half of the table. But still, as a Manchester United fan, the fact that I'm saying we go on a 10-game winning streak and that only means we're in the top half of the table shows how ridiculous this is, that he is the manager of Manchester United. So, we'll see what happens there. But, potentially you look at the likes of Scott Parker as well. I know he's being questioned as a manager. Does he really have the rigor? Is he a classic case of, former player being appointed, as is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, funnily enough. So, I think it'll be an interesting one. But I think West Brom really do stand out to me in that category, yeah.
Yeah. I was just trying to think. Do you have a favorite manager moment of the year so far? I mean, I've enjoyed Bielsa on his bucket. That's been a fun watch for me. I've enjoyed Jurgen Klopp and Roy Keane's obviously little argument on Sky Sports. I think that's been a fun one. Any managerial moments on the sidelines, on the touchline that stands out to you so far, off the cuff?
I think, I mean, it brings into the best meme of the season with Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
I think that one, he, in terms of just manager and personality and just putting a smile on all football fans, I think he's been amazing at doing that. And I think his public image has changed immensely since he's come to Tottenham, which is good for him and good for the club. So
yeah, it has actually changed quite remarkably. Right, we'll shift over to, we'll talk about the league table at the end, but we'll talk about teams so far. And actually we'll talk about these little team awards. You and I will then put together a team of the season, and then we'll look at the league table. So that'll be the plan for those watching for the rest of the show. So team of, who's been the most impressive team for you to watch at the moment so far?
Ooh. Been a really tough question, because I feel like there's teams like Arsenal. I love watching Arsenal, but then, you know, the 3-0 loss to Villa, of course I don't like watching them then. So I think Villa are definitely in with a shout, watching them. I even think, you know, to be a little bit boring, and I think you just can't not put Liverpool in there. You know, like, I know they had the 7-2 defeat, but playing a front four against Manchester City, so potentially the second best team in the league, a front four is, I mean, what a decision from a manager, and how unbelievably daring. And in that first half, it looked immense. So, you know, I'd say Liverpool always going to be up there as well. But then again, you know, Southampton, I think I spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, when saying with them, it's almost this kind of like they still maintain the feeling of togetherness and, you know, and defensive unity, like Burnley, you know, have previously shown. But they're doing it and adapting to the new style of football under Ralph Hasenhüttl, where they have this intense pressure. And I feel like they're always good to watch as well. So I think it's been fantastic. But to top all of them, I've really enjoyed watching Leeds. I think it's fascinating, the one-on-one marking that Bielsa does. So I think even when they lose, I think it's just still fascinating to watch Leeds.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with a lot of your picks there. I've enjoyed watching, I mean, I know Brighton are 16th in the table, but they've really given things a go, especially, you know, the likes of Tarek Lamptey kind of pushing on from fullback, and, you know, Trossard and Alaba Lallana doing their thing in midfield. I think they've become a pretty interesting team to watch. West Ham as well. I feel like David Moyes he's switched formation, and, you know, the likes of Masuaku is now pushing up from wing back. The likes of Kufal, and obviously Fornals has looked a much better player. They've become a really interesting team as well. But like you, Leeds have been one, and I guess the one everyone were pretty excited to watch at the start of the season, and they've not disappointed at all, I feel, in terms of footballing style and intrigue sort of on the pitch. I mean, we flipped that to teams where we're starting to get a little worried about. We're not hitting the panic button on them just yet, but a few starting to get a little concerned about them. I will say Sheffield United, because I feel like last year the thing they hung their hat on was their defensive performances, and that's not really come to fruition, I know, just yet. And I feel like obviously they lost Jack O'Connell out for the season, which feels like looks like a fairly significant loss. And, you know, couple that with, you know, going forward, they were never going to get you the big numbers going forward, and they showed that last season. But when their defense is not been performing just as well, then there's a serious problem, because you put an ineffective defense with an ineffective attack, and that's an issue. So I would slightly get a little concerned. I mean, I'm sure, you know, once Rhian Brewster beds in maybe a bit more, maybe there's a chance he and McBurney can put together a strike partnership. But they would be my concern. I mean, with Burnley, for me, and that's the other team that stands out for me, I've seen Burnley be in a position like this before and kind of get themselves out of it. So I'm not as worried, but Sheffield United is the one that I'm starting to have a few concerns about. So I don't know who you've got for this category.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on Sheffield United. I think it's quite it's quite distressing almost what happens there when your team's built on that defensive foundations, and then you lose that. What else really have you got going for you? And I think, they have maybe been a bit unlucky with the tough fixture list, and then it's hard to bounce back with that confidence. But, we'll see what happens there. I think Fulham as well. I've been worried. I think as soon as they were promoted, I was worried about them, to be honest. I think they really did steal Brentford's spot. And I felt like as soon as they came up, they just weren't ready. And I think, I'm a little bit worried about Scott Parker, just worried about their defence there. And I think just their general quality, or lack of quality that they have. So, I'd say my concerns are Sheffield United and Fulham at the moment.
Yeah, especially with that Lookman penalty was, oh my goodness. That was a tough watch, really. Just because, as we talked about with Slaven Village, it doesn't seem like he's very happy. I would put West Brom in that category because any sign of disharmony is obviously a bit of a red flag. And obviously they didn't make too many significant signings. I know Branislav Ivanovic has obviously has sort of boosted their defense a little bit. And I know Carlton Grant has had that effect going forward, but it might not be enough for me. But then again, who knows? I am the guy who picked Villa to go down at the start of the season. So that's kind of blown up in my face very spectacularly. So is there a team you reckon that's been unlucky with the whole situation so far, with the congested schedule, with injuries? Is there a team that stands out as being unlucky so far?
I think obviously you could bring Liverpool into that, definitely, as we've seen, been a victim of this congested fixture list. But you don't want to victimize them too much when they're still doing really well. So I think I do feel bad for Sheffield United. I just think I think it's for me there potentially it's a confidence issue. They have a tactic, they have a way of playing that's proven it does work. I think they're a bit unlucky with the fixture list, and then I think after that it's just been really tough on them to reestablish that the confidence. But not as much, but maybe you could argue, I do think Frank Lampard has been a bit unlucky. He's got all these signings, and then in the first couple of weeks he actually wasn't able to choose a lot of them. But again, it's the same thing with Liverpool. They are doing reasonably well, so you don't want to victimize them too much there again. But yeah,
I'd agree with you on Sheffield United. Yeah, to an extent, Liverpool you can certainly have sympathy for, but knowing the fickle nature of football fans, I don't think there's a whole lot of sympathy for them. The other one, I guess, going back to last weekend, obviously United playing at 12 o'clock on a Saturday after the Champions League trip to Istanbul on Wednesday, that felt very harsh. So I would put that in sort of the unlucky category, I guess. That brings us on to our final one, and that has been the most impressive performance of the season so far. And for me, it is Villa against Liverpool, because that was a very impressive dismantling. But also Arsenal against United, I think away, that was a very impressive shutdown performance they did, and they really put the brakes on United, really got in their face and put in a very good away day performance. Those two kind of come to mind on first glance. And I imagine the Villa Arsenal showing can also be put up there as well. So any thoughts on the most impressive team showing of the year so far?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on all of them. The other one I'd put in would be Spurs 6-1 Man United. Just because of, I think there's so much focus obviously in that documentary and with Spurs that they weren't ruthless enough. They're a group of nice guys. And I think 6-1, they did not hold back. That defense was there to exploit, and they couldn't have exploited it anymore. So I think I've been impressed with there, maybe slight mentality shift. So I think that was definitely an impressive showing.
Yeah, I also put Leicester against Man City as well away in that 5-3 game. That was very impressive to watch them dismantled. Just quickly, award for worst defensive collapse in a single game, would that be United against Spurs?
It's got to be. That's unrivaled, I think. Yeah, that I mean, to be honest, that could also go for meme of the season. Just that video there. So it was that disastrous.
Absolutely. So here we go. I'm going to try, and I know we are running sort of short on time. I'm trying to put together. There we go. Lineup. Let me see if I can get share screen for this, and we'll put together a team of the season. In goal, who do we have as being the most impressive goalkeeper? I mean, I guess for me, I sort of go between Martinez and Aston Villa's obviously done a very good job. But it's actually been this is quite a hard one to call, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I was obviously thinking about this earlier, and I don't actually think there's a massive standout. I still think Alisson's been great, but obviously, maybe it's been hard for him because he's not got two centre backs in front of him anymore. So yeah. I think Emi Martinez would probably edge it for me just with Villa's form.
Yep, I'm just going to add that in. I mean, let's just assume it's a 4-man back line. So right back, again, the usual suspects. Alexander-Arnold's not quite hit the mark. Who would you? I mean, it is quite of a. It is this is sort of a difficult one to think of for right back.
I'd be tempted to go with Lamptey.
Yes, actually,
he was good last season, and I think he's improved once again. So
yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you. On the left, it's. I mean, you could put Chilwell, you could put Castagna, you could put Robertson's. Obviously, had a very good season as well. On the left, that one's certainly a crowded field. Who did you think of at left back?
I think it was definitely between Chilwell and Castagna. I think difficult choice between them. I think Chilwell's played less games. He didn't quite come into the lineup straight away, but I think the games he's been in, he's been very effective. So I'd be inclined to put Chilwell slightly ahead. Yeah,
I understand. That makes a lot of sense. Centre back. So, oh boy. I mean, Gabriel also had a very good start at Arsenal. That sort of has fizzled out as a result of Arsenal's performances. Consa's obviously had a good start at Villa. Just going through the list, I'm sure Harry Maguire won't make this team. Ruben Dias has obviously made a solid start. I mean, there's a few players that come to mind. Any thoughts on centre-back?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one to call because obviously when I know Virgil van Dijk's injured, but I mean, no one does really compare when he does play. But then again, you bring in a 7 to conceding 7 goals, but I don't know. Gabriel, I'd like to be in there. I think I'm a big fan of him.
Oh, Fofana should be in then, surely.
Oh, Fofana. Fofana needs to be in there. I think Fofana.
So that's an obvious one. And then for the other one, who do we think Gabriel?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to go with Gabriel just because obviously Van Dijk's injured, and it may maybe it's a bit more exciting than seeing Van Dijk in there yet again.
It's an all Liga centre back pairing. That's what it seems to be at the moment. We'll play around with. I'll play around with the midfield. I'll just push one into a winger spot. But midfield, let's say to midfield 3. I'm inclined to put Højbjerg in as the defensive shield.
Yeah, I'd agree with that
because he's just transformed that side of it. And then I mean, you could put Grealish in and, avoid and allow space for another forward going up front.
Yeah, I think Grealish has got to be in there somewhere. You naturally go to the big names like De Bruyne, but you even think, whilst obviously he's been impressive in some games, I think there's potentially people in here who are going to rival that spot if it's team of the season so far. So yeah, I'd be inclined to put Grealish in, but then this third one's interesting. I think there's not a massive standout for me to put in there.
I'm sort of going through the list of names, but you could put James Rodriguez there.
Yes, that would be a good shout, actually. I think.
Yeah.
To keep that front three open.
Right. So he'll go in there. So, okay. We are left then with the front three. Now, the first names obviously come to mind. Does Diogo Jota automatically get in?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you want to see Mane in there as well, and I think with the front three, we're lucky nowadays. It's fluid. You can pretty much put them on either wing. Most people.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I'm just gonna pencil in this man.
Yeah,
you can see on the screen. Yeah, there we go. I feel like he's definitely in. Sorry. And then obviously, you have Kane and Son Heung-min as well. So it's a crowded field.
Yeah, I'd want to put Son in there.
Yeah.
I think, I think he's such an integral part to what Tottenham do, I think. And then I think this right wing spot is very difficult. Because obviously I think Mane's been really solid again. Obviously Jota. I think City's wingers, they've not quite kicked off just like City as of yet. So I think this one's really difficult to call.
I'm just having a quick look at the league table to see if any names sort of float into mind, but none really. I mean, Wilf Zaha's had a good start, but it's not been consistent enough for me personally. I'm quite happy to put down. Sadio Mane or Diogo Jota. I'll give it to Jota just because he's made a start that I don't think anyone could have seen. Obviously Sadio Mane has been very impressive, and I'm sure he'll make his way into the team of the season as time goes on. But I'm quite happy to make it that team at the moment that we've got on screen.
Yeah, no, I think it's a strong team, and what's actually nice about that team is there's not someone who there's no Kevin De Bruyne, Virgil van Dijk, or Sadio Mane. Probably three who would have been in like the last three Premier League teams. So I think it's interesting getting some good names in there, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I guess honourable mentions, and while we have it on screen and talk about a bench, Sadio Mane would be on the bench for me. I would think. He's an honourable mention. I think James Ward-Prowse has had a very strong start to the season as well. He'd be on my sort of bench. It is a quite hard one, but I feel like this Ross Barkley as well, you can also put on the bench. But this has been I think this is a very representative team of how the season's gone so far.
Yeah, but I think all of those players are playing for the most in form clubs, really, maybe minus Lamptey for Brighton. But then again, Lamptey's been absolutely phenomenal, and I think is head and shoulders above any other right back in the league. So I think I think that lineup really does reflect Tottenham, Arsenal, Villa, and Everton in how strong they're doing this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've done a decent job of nailing that there. I think the final thing to do, and I know it is 5. And I know the last thing to do, I guess, for me is just let's have a look at that Premier League table so far. Oh boy, I'm not sure what's going on. Just waiting on that at the moment. Oh, right. Okay. Well, my screen seems to have crashed. So this is interesting. You can hear me, right, Ben?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So my screen's crashed. Great. So I'm gonna just have to finish. I mean, this is classic student radio, so I'm not mad. This is exactly how I sort of thought this was gonna go. I'm looking at the table now. We've got Leicester in first place with 18 points, Tottenham in second with 17, Liverpool third with 17, and Southampton fourth with 16. Top four. How likely is that top four to stay the same? Any thoughts on those four going forward at the moment?
I mean, I think it's definitely going to change. Inevitably, the only one I see is definitely 100% staying in there would be Tottenham. I feel like they are title contenders, so I think they're very impressed me very much so, especially with even just that 1-0 win against West Brom last weekend. I think that's a massive win. That's a game that the previous Tottenham would have been losing. So big game for them. And I think whilst Southampton have done really well, I think they probably will drop out. Same with Leicester. Again, I think they're two teams who are doing really well, but probably going to drop out. And then obviously Liverpool will always, I think, remain title contenders with that squad, even with the injuries they've got. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I definitely think there's a lot of movement still to happen, but like we said before, impossible to call this year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, just bear with me. I'm just gonna come in and out of the studio. So if you're left on screen, here we go. Let's see how this works. There we go. I'm back, sort of. I'm going to remove this one because that has been technical difficulties as per usual on Raw 12:51 AM. This wouldn't be the same without it. So a sort of interrupted way. But yes, I agree with you that with the top of the table, I feel Southampton have obviously made an exceptional start. Whether that remains is an entirely different thing. But a strong start from them. And yeah, if you're a Liverpool or Tottenham fan, you're thinking you've sort of navigated through this early part of the season pretty well, and pretty much in a strong position to finish off the rest of the season. So very, very strong start from those teams. Going towards, I mean, City 10th, Arsenal 11th. That's an interesting predicament. You don't expect them to stay, and Man United in 14th. Does anything stand out to you about the mid-table so far when you look at the table?
I think the City talking point's massive in the sense that for weeks now I'm just expecting them to kick on, and they're not. Every time they take a step forward, it's a step back, and they're not actually flying up through this table like everyone expects. So it'd be really interesting to see what's going to happen there. I'm still inclined to believe that they are going to fly up the table just of the sheer amount of quality they've got, but they've proven me wrong so far. Arsenal, I believe they'll continue to build, and they'll get up there. I'm confident in watching the way they play. Manchester United, I think, whilst they come out and say they are going to stick with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he is their man. You've got to have a bit of give and take. If they stay 14th in the table or around that, then he's got to go, because that is unacceptable. So, really, really hoping that changes one way or another. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see those teams. Incredibly underwhelming so far, but give Arsenal a shout out in terms of their performances.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, I mean, the bottom three of West Brom, Burnley, Sheffield United, obviously, again, not a huge time to panic at the moment, but it doesn't bode well going forward. And obviously, in a league where of fine margins, it doesn't look particularly encouraging for them. And a turnaround's going to have to happen fairly soon, you'd think, for those three.
Yeah, 100%. I think we mentioned it before, but with the sentimental aspect of Sean Dyche and Chris Wilder, I think it's going to be difficult to sack them. So I think it will definitely be more of a kind of stick with their man and hope they can stay up. I personally, unless West Brom have a very significant managerial change, I think they're probably going to be gone. Whereas I think over these past few years, we've seen the real character of Sean Dyche and that Burnley team. I believe they will stay up. But I know they're going for a tough patch, and Fulham, I think, are definitely going to be in a bit of trouble as well. But hopefully those teams will figure it out. But obviously, if those teams do figure it out, they're just replaced by another three. So that's the ruthlessness of the Premier League. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Absolutely, and I'm going back. I'm looking at my predictions from the start of the season. I had Fulham, West Brom, and Villa finishing at the bottom. I can't say that I would go back on those yet. I feel like those are nailed on. As for Liverpool finishing, as for City winning, I had City winning the title actually, and yeah, it's very hard. That one's a lot harder to call, I feel. Picking out those teams. I'm going to stick to my predictions. Any predictions that you'd want to change, or are you sticking to what you kind of made at the start of the season?
I think I'd stick with I think I originally had West Brom and Fulham definitely going down, and I'd stick with them. Maybe sub out West Ham for Burnley or Sheffield United, but because West Ham have impressed me, but who knows what's going to happen there. Definitely, I predicted City to win the league as well. I'm confident that's not going to happen now, so I'd be inclined to say Liverpool, because anything else to call seems way too daring because it's that open right now. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's more open than it's been for a lot of years now. So
I had United finishing fourth, and I don't know how that one's the one I'm not so sure, because I had Tottenham in fifth. So that'll be very interesting one. But anyway, it's predictions. Things happen. So we'll see how the season goes out, and we'll probably end it there. So my thanks, Ben, for coming on. It was a different show, but a fun one nonetheless. Let us know if you agree or disagree with our awards. I'm sure I'll probably do the team of the season thing again and get a graphic up and put it on our social media and see if you guys agree with them or not, because I feel like I feel pretty confident that we've nailed down the starting 11, but we'll see what people think. And we'll be back on Wednesday, Raw Sport Weekly. We'll definitely go through the Turkish Grand Prix, as we said. We'll go through whatever sport's going on, and then next week, Quaran-Stream will be back going over the international action, previewing the likes of Liverpool, Leicester, and probably another busy week of Champions League football again, knowing the football calendar. So until then, thank you for watching. Apologies for late technical difficulties on my part. That's just because my computer's given up. And we will see you next Wednesday, next Saturday, as per usual.